welcome. A couple of days ago in Venerable Children's talk on bodhicitta, she introduced their two basic methods in the Tibetan tradition for cultivating bodhicitta, the sevenfold cause and effect method, and the equalizing and exchanging self and others method. And in both of those methods, this meditation that Venerable Thubten introduced yesterday, the kindness of others, has a really critical role. In the sevenfold cause and effect method, the very first point is to logically deduce that if in fact we have been taking rebirth beginninglessly, uncontrollably, then we have been born again and again and again. And when we have been born again and again and again, we have been born to mothers of all different realms. And so once that point is established, and it's not an easy one to do, but once that point is established, we think about then the kindness that we've received from our mother in this life. We examine the kindness that we see of mothers, especially with newborns, all around us. We observe the incredible care that mothers of different animal species give to their children. And we develop this sense of warmth, not to overlook the role of the father, but in species after species across the planet, if you really look, it is at that time almost of conception, but for sure, as soon as that child emerges and reaches to be fed, that link of kindness that a mother never really lets go of is formed. And when we can come back and appreciate that kindness and start to examine the possibility that every single being at one time or another has been our mother, then our appreciation for sentient beings grows. Then in the sevenfold equalizing and exchanging self and others method, we expand that list, as Venerable Thubten pointed out. So we look at the kindness of our friends, the kindness of our teachers, the kindness of our family again, the kindness of strangers. The list is infinite. And even the kindness of our enemies, cultivating over and over and over a gratitude for the kindness that we receive and upon which basis we even survive. And so the point of doing this meditation in both situations is to lead us to ultimately come to the realization that sentient beings are lovable, that every being is lovable. And that is not an easy point to come to. But the way we're taught about developing bodhicitta is that in order to have a love that is big enough to include every single living being, which for us, the object of bodhicitta is every single living being, then we have to learn to see them as lovable. On that basis, and then along with that, we also have to learn to recognize their suffering and have the strong wish to be able to relieve that suffering. Therefore, since we can't do that now, we recognize we must become Buddha in order to do that. So that's the line of thought. So today, I wanted to do a little bit of that reflection or that meditation on the kindness of others by taking the opportunity to reflect on the kindness of the Taiwanese Bhikshunis. Because truly, without the Taiwanese Bhikshuni Sangha, there would be no Sravasti Abbey. Not a single monastic would be sitting in this room right now. It's also true that without the Bhikshu Sangha and the extraordinary teachings coming from Tibet, we would also not be here right now. We would not be in this room. And to take it a little bit further, if it weren't for the Chinese Bhikshu Sangha, there would be no ordained Bhikshunis in this room, or Bhikshu either, wherever he is. But the monks are not here, and you are. So I have the opportunity to thank you a little bit, because it's a very important part of our reflection. And, just to take any line of of reflecting on the kindness we receive can take us to the conclusion of how much we have benefited from the efforts of others, whether we know them or not. And on that basis, continue to spur our aspiration to become fully awakened in order to repay that kindness, right? So I don't know. I've wondered this when I was in Taiwan for my full ordination years ago. I don't know if I could explain to you what it's like to grow up in a country where there is no Buddha Dharma. It's not quite the same today, but certainly when I was a child, when most of the senior nuns here were children, there was definitely Dharma here. And it was in the specific immigrant communities that really brought the Buddha Dharma here. So not until, for most of us, until we were fully grown adults, and I think that's true even for our younger monastics, we did not meet the Dharma that became the focus of which began to answer our questions. I loved the teaching just now on the power of asking that question over and over. So to be able to think about, to meet the Dharma in this life, in North America, in this time, in the 21st century, is kind of like a miracle all the time. That alone is like a miracle all the time when we reflect on it. And when we think about how it is that Venerable children came to meet the Dharma, I mean, surely her powerful karma is what led her in the 1970s to actually meet the teachers that she met. That she was able to connect with extraordinary masters of practice and scholarship, even in the 1970s, such that it popped that kernel of karma, that seed in her, to ripen and commit her life to it. To commit her life in such a way that she was, for some reason, why in the world would a Jewish girl from California think she's going to come here and develop a Buddhist monastery by herself? Who was that? Who would think that? Well, Venerable Thubten Chonyi did, but not by herself, because not just did she have this extraordinary support of these teachers, but also discovered that even though she could not get full ordination in her own tradition, she could go to Taiwan. And there the Bhikshuni Sangha welcomed her. They couldn't translate much for her, but they gave her the ordination and gave her the Vinaya lineage that has allowed her to be able to carry this forward. So here we are at Sravasti Abbey. As I said to someone yesterday, we're like in this confluence of two huge rivers of Dharma. One that has come through, through the Chinese tradition, almost 2,000 years coming out of India and coming forward. Another from in Tibet, 1,300 years of Dharma coming forward, have come together in this moment in a place where the Buddha Dharma has never, ever flourished before. That is amazing. The kindness of the people who have carried this forward, one after another, both the monastics and the people who have supported those monastics, we can reflect on for days to just think about people just doing their practice, cultivating their good qualities, sharing what they've learned, passing that on from one monastic to another, leading to this point. And when I think about the confluence of these two rivers too, both have been through extraordinary tragedy in order to carry this Dharma forward. Tibet was such a closed environment and specialized in producing awakened beings, it seems, as one of our American scholars teaches us. They just, practiced creating realized beings over the course of their kind of isolated period. And yet, when the Chinese communists invaded their country, the whole system cracked over. They had to pour out of there to save their lives. And only because of that do we have Tibetan Buddhism in the West. So to think about the kindness of those beings who fled, the suffering that they endured, the commitment that they had to carry on the Dharma after they left Tibet. His Holiness the Dalai Lama had a very clear vision that as soon as they came into India, he reestablished the monasteries as quickly as he could. And he also began to send trained monastics to the West to seed it here, where it might be safer. At the same time, how did the Buddhism get to Taiwan? You know this story too. Your Master Shengyen was a huge part of being a part of the Cultural Revolution that escaped and managed to bring the seeds of that treasure from China into Taiwan, where it could grow and flourish. So if we think about the incredible courage and kindness of those beings who have carried this lineage forward to us today, you know, in a way, I may do it again. I get quite emotional about this. Who was telling this story about Master Shengyen when he was sick? Even when he was ill, he came and made sure that he gave the talk again, again, and again. Of course, I was sick and vulnerable, but I'm over there in the cabin just weeping, not just because of his courage and commitment, but also because I know our teacher would do the same. That's the quality of the guidance we have here now. And so we can go on and on and back and back and back. Who were the monastics that carried the Dharma after the Buddha? Who were the monastics that took it to Sri Lanka? Venerable Thubten and I have often said to one another, who were the nuns who took that boat from Sri Lanka to China to give the Bhikshuni ordination that established that lineage in, 3rd century, 4th century BC? We'll never know who those nuns are. I mean, maybe some of them are sitting in this room for all we know. But the kindness upon which we as monastics have lived our lives and can live our lives right now, when we start to think about that, is like almost inconceivable. The numbers, the commitment, the practice of just ordinary monastics. I mean, some of them, hopefully, certainly, some of them came to realization. Some people may be fully awakened by right now, but most of them are just like us. Ordinary monastics take ordination, make our commitment, do our best, share the Dharma, learn what we learn, die, hopefully get a good rebirth. Just ordinary people. But in that way, the Buddha's fourfold Sangha really has continued for 2,600 years. And on that basis, we hope it's going to go on and on and on and on and on. So here we are. We bring all of this together at Sravasti Abbey in Newport, Washington, USA. It's amazing that we're here. I think too, I look about the flourishing of the Dharma in the Chinese tradition for over about 2,000 years, close to 2,000 years, right? And the Tibetan tradition for 1,400 years. At Sravasti Abbey, the Dharma has flourished, I don't think you can say even 20 years. What does flourished mean, actually, really? And when this monastery was founded 20 years ago, there was only one monastic, so you can't even say there was a full Sangha here. It wasn't until 2011 that we finally had our first 4, and it was actually 5 Bhikshunis that established a Sangha. And the way we were able to do that was because of the generosity of the Taiwanese Bhikshunis. That Venerable Children wanted to give the ordination here. She could not give that alone. But the nuns in Seattle, in Kirkland, principally they were luminary nuns at that time, were totally willing, totally present every time there was someone ready to ordain. Those nuns came together and made it possible to make that ordination possible, and slowly the community has grown. when our first monk wanted to ordain, actually it was earlier than Venerable Losang, Venerable John Pell ordained about the same year I did, actually. Then those nuns arranged for the Chinese Bhikshus to give the ordination. They've offered us how, they've helped translate the ceremonies. They have taught us how to do the ceremonies. Venerable Master Hengqing came to teach us how to do Varsa, how to enter. She brought with her nuns that would teach us how to be able to adapt the melodies so that we can do the ceremonies in this way. I mean, the showering of gift just from our connection with the Taiwanese Bhikshunis, again, is inconceivable. Without which, there's no Dharma here. There's none. And so I wanted to share, Venerable Simke, I think, pointed out the Abbey mission statement the other day. I wanted to read it fully. It was written before there was more than one monastic. No, at the time there was one monastic here, Venerable Thubten Chonyi. When we adopted this mission, Sravasti Abbey supports a flourishing monastic community where learning and practicing Buddha's ancient teachings cultivate peace in the hearts of the residents, and the visitors, and in the world. And then we added a few years later these kind of action statements. We seek to preserve Buddha's teachings purely, to root them deeply in Western soil, to share them with others, to build an enduring Sangha, and to serve sentient beings for as long as space remains. So this is a mission that's utterly dependent on the Sangha flourishing. And the Sangha flourishes totally in dependence on the lay people supporting the Sangha. And also on the Sangha that comes before us that actually teaches us how to be Sangha. So as I use this meditation on the kindness of others, this is just one line of reasoning. This is just one line of examples to be inspired by the extraordinary generosity and kindness by which my personal life is lived. The lives of the people who are touched by this abbey are lived. And as we keep that in mind again and again and again, how could our love not grow? Our love for the meaning, the wish for other living beings to have happiness and genuine happiness, liberated happiness. And how could our compassion for all of the obstacles, all the things that get in the way of us having that happiness, how could our compassion for all of us so obscured by what the real causes are, how could that not grow? So I want to say thank you. In a way, it is not personal, I know that, but I also so strongly appreciate and value this river, being a drop, nobody but a drop in this river, also doing my own practice, doing what I can, doing my best, sharing as I can. I will die soon. And then hopefully I get to come back. That's my prayer. I come back and pick up exactly where I left off. I hope to meet the Buddha Dharma a whole lot younger next time. But we'll see. I just create the causes for it. But in so doing, this the treasure of the Dharma that gives us this meditation on the kindness of others, I think can't be overstated. And our gratitude collectively for what we have received from the Sangha that came before us in all the rivers. But because you're here, especially for the Bhikshuni Sangha in Taiwan, I just want to thank you.